Honestly, it amazes me that I can still find new Empire units to talk about even after all this time. Mortar wagons. So, they're mortars on war wagons. And what is it? Well, you pay an extra 300 points, essentially, for your mortars to get mounted into wagons. That gives them 90 armor. Obviously, war wagons 50 speed. They get slightly better combat stats, and all the crew is contained within the war wagons, right? So the HP is just spread between these 3 unit models, rather than between the artillery and the crew itself. As with a regular mortar, basically, they're a lot more survivable and mobile, and I guess that helps with the survivability thing, right? So, in this matchup, Wicked here are going to be using against Bretonnia. We've got Albrecht versus Marcus here. Marcus with a staunch line of spears and halberds. He's got Empire Knights, a couple of Outriders in the woods, Bright Wizard, and those are the only ranged units, or just the war wagons, right? Oh, I guess the Outriders as well. Bretonnia went in a similar direction. Only ranged is artillery. They've got three field trebuchets along with peasant mobs here up front. Again, Albrecht leading the way. Lifecaster, of course. 4 questing knights, a couple of battle pilgrims to help win the infantry fight. And that's basically it. So the mortar wagons here, they're going to come forward and kind of pull the Bretonnians out of position, right? You can see the trebuchets trying to counter fire. They are going to get some hits here, but a lot of the shots are missing because of the smallish kind of footprint of the war wagons. The war wagons are getting some shots right now. Best targets for them to go after are the battle pilgrims. I believe the thinking here is normally you would use them against archers, right? Because Bretonnian peasant archers can be very dangerous. Mortars are a great way of dealing with them because they're low leadership. It only takes a couple of hits to rout them. But here, he's got a lot of infantry to fire at, and potentially even these questing knights. Only 80 armor, it's pretty good, but it's still low enough that the mortars can actually do some damage to them, especially if they're blobbed up in a melee fight. So let's see how that plays out. Very nice, sneaky use of these Outriders, going nice and wide so they don't get spotted. Going to maneuver up through the low forest there, the scrub oaks. Come get at these field trebuchets here. Meanwhile, on the front line, Bretonnians are maneuvering over on their right to try and get these questing knights in a flanking position. Wicked's kind of forming a little bit of a mobile box here. He's not white line camping. He's not going to, cut off this flank of escape, but he doesn't really need to. And just form up his spears and halberds in, bracing positions. Should be able to defend himself just fine. And this is a tactic, this kind of wagon gun fort, I have used myself sometimes, usually with just regular war wagons, but with the mortars is an interesting kind of variation, especially in this matchup, given that, their main sort of danger units are cavalry mobility type units. Their halberds and spears are very cost effective in defending that, and the biggest danger to especially your halberds is Bretonnian peasant archers, absolutely. So being able to just shoot them with the mortars, kind of, really good synergy, I have to say. I like this build a lot from Wicked. Even though the mortar wagons are a little bit of a meme unit, that generally mortars have a hard time paying for themselves normally, although a lot of that is because they kind of have slow firing time, and they take a while to deal their damage, right? The gun wagons here, the war wagon mortars, they can at least buy themselves a little bit more time with their extra survivability in theory, but also because you pay more for them, they're going to be, you're going to have less resources allocated in order to protect. But here we've got the water and fire here, the wave from Albrecht followed up by a burning head. Only the Sigmar Suns are unbreakable, so literally everything else routes. Nice little overrun there into that men-at-arms as well, so nice spiteful wind spells on both sides. The questing knights are having a hard time kind of finding their way into this formation, and again, this is sort of the idea is you have a mobile box. You don't necessarily box up all in one place, but you can form up your box whenever you need to with these spears and halberds and whatnot. Marcus throwing down his net there to keep Albrecht locked in place. The Empire Knights also pin him up against the halberds. The Amber Wizard's definitely in danger. He's only got 13 melee defense, 50 melee attack, so he will actually get some hits on Albrecht during this time, but he will get absolutely smashed in the face by Albrecht. Marcus doing his best, using his missiles there to go after said Albrecht, but if we check back in the rest of the battlefield, the trebuchets got cleared up, and the mortars are basically cleaning up everything else. You can see this battle pilgrim here just taking volley after volley. quantity has a quality all its own. Although mortars aren't typically super accurate, with this many mortars firing, I mean, you're bound to get some hits. And beautiful unit, I have to say. Oh yeah, right on the money. Getting some more kills there. Funny enough, the mortars probably haven't got that great a value yet, but you can see here they switch targets, so we can see their damage against these cavalry. This burning head isn't going to do a ton. It does some damage. The leadership debuff is more important, especially when combined now with that getting shot by artillery debuff. You can see here if I mouse over, it's going to change a lot, but if you catch it, yeah, damaged by artillery, discouraged by abilities, so you get some overlapping leadership debuffs there. Utilizing that, it does rout those questing knights, so definitely grim for Bretonnia. Now, with that maneuver to take out the trebuchets and just with the lack of peasant archers in this build, I do think it was a tough cause. I mean, he brought Albric, so got to give him style points for that at the very least. But Outriders now maneuvering to try and finish off Albric, and the rest of the force is just being cleaned up by mortars and Empire Knights. They just can't break through this hill position. The wagon fort, mortar wagon fort this time, is awesome. And look at that cinematic shot, man. The wagons just sitting up at the top of the hill with these pikes defending them. Halberds down here. These questing knights trying to get up the hill. Very much a classic Total War image there. I mean, if you don't look at the griffin. The griff, I guess. Oh, man, this game is beautiful. I can't wait for Game 3, too, for all of the new stuff to get added in. Of course, there was some news recently. I didn't cover it too much on the channel, but it's just news about news. Basically, they said news will be in September on Game 3. They'll be talking more about Cathay at that point, so definitely keep your eyes focused for that. In the meantime, we'll have to satisfy ourselves with these two human factions going to battle here, and credit to Wicked, big thanks for this build, man. I love this one, I have to say. He sent me a screenshot of it, and I said, yes, please send me that replay, because War Wagons with Mortars is an uncommon pick, and actually doing quite well here. Kind of not carrying a ton of value, although they did get pretty good value. If they were regular mortars, they would have paid for themselves, at least two of them. But more so tactical value-wise, you know, absorbing shots from the field trebuchets, and then also kind of forcing that engagement into the way it went, drawing the cavalry into the halberds, and just kind of providing that consistent DPS and leadership damage. The leadership damage in particular, you know, the peasant units, like one mortar shell does a pretty substantial amount of their HP percentage in damage, right? So they'll get damage taken, shock damage taken, plus artillery damage taken modifiers on their leadership. All of those can stack up to where you see like a lot of these units didn't even get any value whatsoever. That's a lot of that due to the mortars just ruining their leadership before they can get close. Bretonnia is definitely the weakest to this. I don't know, this is maybe the one matchup where I would use them occasionally. In terms of other matchups, we'll have to kind of think through it in just a minute and see. But the rest of the build, obviously Outriders cleaning up the trebuchets, got great value, then came in to shoot high-value targets in the late game. Spears, halberds do their thing. Lots of kills on the Fire Wizard. Marcus also getting some pretty nice value back. So, yeah, Albric, true hero build here. Actually got some pretty good value himself, but just not enough. Definitely, I mean, Battle Pilgrims are a nice thought. Probably just replace them with archers. Maybe replace one of these trebuchets with archers as well, just to get some bow fire in there. But anyway, let's kind of compare. Mortar wagons are unique. They're the only artillery chariot in the game. I mean, you also have the Regiment of Renown, technically, which is actually almost a completely different unit because that's a Hellblaster on the back, so we kind of discount them. But in terms of like true artillery, you know, mounted on wagons, I guess this is true artillery, but still, you know what I mean. As a unit, non-ROR, they are unique, so best to just compare them to their basic counterpart, right? And this is what I was saying, you pay 300 points for that mobility, extra HP, which again is divvied up between less models, so it's actually a pretty substantial HP buff, 70 armor, extra speed and leadership, a little bit of extra stats as well, so in general, it is, you know, you can see the benefit that you get from buying the upgrade, but at the same time, like I said, mortars, it's tough for them to pay for themselves to begin with, so paying 300 extra points is just saying, like, I'm, you know, that much less likely to get full value from my mortars. But tactically, they can be very good, like in this situation here. The other matchup I would sort of wonder about would be perhaps Skaven. You know, being able to maneuver around and potentially stay out of range of something like Giselles. These guys have 380 range. Giselles have what is this? Here, 275, so you can outrange Giselles pretty significantly by more than 100 range. And Warp Lightning Cannons you're not going to be able to outrange, but any kind of weapons teams you can stay out in front of, maneuver away, and just continuously rain down shots on them. Generally, weapons teams are weak to catapult-type artillery. While mortars aren't exactly catapults, they still kind of have that high arc of fire, allows them to land shots in the middle of a formation. The kind of lack of AP damage is a little bit of an issue. They don't have the best AP in the world. Still pretty decent, especially if the model gets hit directly. But only 16 explosive armor-piercing damage means that, you know, at 70 armor, Giselles are going to get some mitigation. I mean, they'll still take pretty substantial damage from it. It's definitely worth shooting the weapons teams, but just understand that it's getting in the neighborhood where your lack of AP will start to tell. But in general, you know, raining down on Skaven units can be pretty effective, especially if you think the Skaven player is going to try and sit back and shoot you. You know, it's kind of a way of counter-shooting. Although, again, would you just take regular mortars in that situation? The issue with them is the Giselles might be able to move forward, and once they do, your mortars are basically sitting ducks. At least with the War Wagon mortars, they can run away. And maybe, just maybe in the late game, act as some kind of really haggard mass-blocking chariots. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about Mortar Wagons. Do you use them at all in multiplayer? Or if so, when and what matchups? Curious to see what you have to say. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.